The clinking of glasses echoed through the wedding, a sound as familiar as it was ordinary, almost soothing. Candles flickered against the polished wood of the officers' club at Fort Bragg, their warm glow spilling across the room. For a fleeting moment, everything felt calm. White tablecloths, silver cutlery, the soft hum of a string quartet. But beneath the surface, a quiet tension pressed against my chest, heavy like the absence of something vital. I stood in my ivory silk dress, flowing to the floor, Way's hand brushing mine. He looked steady, composed, a Navy man even in his suit. Around us, fellow soldiers formed a ring of honor, brothers and sisters in arms saluting, as if this union were part of a greater mission. The flags, the uniforms, the tradition. It was a wedding steeped in ceremony, respect, and service. Yet, every time my eyes drifted to the row of seats marked family, I saw only emptiness. The white ribbons tied neatly around the chairs felt like a cruel jest, placeholders for those who chose not to come. No father adjusting his tie, no mother dabbing her eyes, no sister standing proud, just air where love should have been. I tried to bury the ache in routine gestures, smile for the camera, hold the knife steady, lean close to Way as we cut the cake. Laughter filled the hall, but each sound bounced off the hollow space inside me. Then, from the hidden seam of my dress, a vibration hummed. I ignored it at first. Another buzz, then another. Finally, I slipped my hand into the pocket and pulled out the phone. The screen glowed against the dim light of the hall. 36 missed calls from Mom. One new message. We need to talk now. I froze. My heart stuttered. The champagne glass trembled in my hand. Months of silence, months of rejection, all culminating in their absence today. And now, this sudden desperation, this urgency. Why now? I forced a laugh for the guests, raised my glass higher, and spoke words of gratitude that felt rehearsed, detached, almost foreign. The hall erupted in cheers, but I barely heard them. My mind was tethered to that glowing screen, to the unanswered questions spilling faster than I could contain. If you've ever been cast aside by your family, you know it doesn't arrive with a slammed door. It comes quietly, through omissions, through silences, through the empty rows on the most important day of your life. It cuts deeper than shrapnel because it's not the enemy's fire, but your own blood's indifference that wounds. Way's hand steadied mine, a silent anchor. He didn't ask, didn't need to. He knew something in me had shifted, and I knew it too. Whatever waited on the other end of those 36 calls was more than a message. It was a reckoning. The glow of my phone pulled me backward, past the champagne and empty chairs, into the years where the fracture began. Long before I was Major Maylin, I was just a daughter in a small Oklahoma town, raised under the shadow of a Marine father, Hiroshi, and a mother, Akemi, who carried both gentleness and steel as a nurse. Ours was a house where discipline was the air we breathed, where expectations marched louder than any words of love. At the center of that household stood my younger sister, Sakura, 3 years my junior. She was everything my parents seemed to dream of: graceful, charming, a star under Friday night lights with a cheerleading routine that dazzled. Coaches called her the future. Neighbors praised her. Boys lined up to hold her hand. My father, Hiroshi, spoke her name with a pride that filled entire rooms. My mother, Akemi, kept scrapbooks of her newspaper clippings, her eyes shining at every mention of her performances. I, on the other hand, learned to find my victories quietly. Straight A's, Honor Society, the ROTC program that earned me a scholarship to West Point. Each achievement was neatly tucked away, noted with a brief nod. A good job, uttered like a formality. Sakura was the daughter they adored. I was a steady star, glowing faintly in her orbit, rarely noticed. The day I graduated from West Point should have been the moment they saw me, really saw me. The cadet gray uniform pressed sharp, the saber polished, the long march across the field as my name was called. But when I looked into the stands, searching for their faces. The seats were empty. I learned later they had flown west, chasing another of Sakura's cheerleading competitions in California. That hollow in my chest didn't form overnight. It was carved year after year, absence by absence, until I began to believe invisibility was my role in the family. I carried the discipline they prized, the honor they spoke of, yet I was never enough to be chosen over Sakura. If you've ever felt like the forgotten child, you know it's not the silence itself that breaks you. It's realizing the silence is intentional. That day at West Point, with the parade field stretching endless before me, I knew with certainty in their story. I was the daughter left behind. That day had marked me in ways I didn't yet understand. If my family cannot see me, then I would carve out a place where I cannot be ignored. The army became that place. What began as an escape from absence soon became the ground where I built myself, brick by brick, under fire and under oath. Afghanistan was where I learned the raw edges of life and death. I was 24, barely past cadet grade, when a convoy I commanded was ambushed in Kandahar. Dust rose thick, gunfire echoed, and decisions had to be made in heartbeats. It was there I pulled Captain Liangshan out from the wreckage of a burning vehicle. My hands blistered, my lungs scorched by smoke. He would later joke that I had dragged him back into the world by sheer stubbornness. But from that day forward, Liang became more than a fellow officer. He was the brother I had never been given at home. In foxholes and makeshift barracks, through silence and shared rations, we learned to trust each other with everything, including the weight we carried inside. The army gave me what my blood never had, a family bound, not by expectation, but by loyalty. Each salute, each shoulder leaned against an exhaustion, each hand extended when the night felt too long. It built a home stronger than any walls in Oklahoma. In that brotherhood, I wasn't invisible. I was necessary. I was enough. It was during a joint training exercise at Norfolk that I first met Wei Zhang, a Navy man with steady eyes, carrying himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had also seen the cost of service. What unsettled me most was how quickly he seemed to see through me. Where others noticed only rank and ribbons, he noticed the pauses between my words, the shadows that sometimes crossed my face. He didn't flinch at them. He didn't ask me to bury them. He simply stayed. Wei once told me, "Strength isn't just what you carry on your shoulders, Mei. It's also what you let someone else hold for you." In his presence, I learned to unclench fists I didn't know I had been holding. In his gaze, I was no longer the forgotten daughter or the hardened soldier. I was a woman worth being loved exactly as she was. Wei's proposal came not under chandeliers or candlelight, but in the heart of the place that had shaped us both. We were back on base after a grueling field exercise, uniforms still carrying the dust of the day. He dropped to one knee right there in the barracks courtyard, the American flag snapping overhead in the evening wind. For a heartbeat, the world went quiet. Then the courtyard erupted. My soldiers, my family, shouted a thunderous hua, their voices echoing against concrete and sky. For the first time, I felt a joy so pure it nearly drowned out years of silence. That night, my hands trembled as I dialed the number I had memorized since childhood. It had been months since I last heard their voices, but I carried hope as though it were a fragile flame cupped between my palms. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe this was news too large, too bright for them to overlook. The line clicked, and my mother, Akemi, answered. I told her everything. How Wei had knelt, how the ring caught the last light of day, how the people who had fought beside me shouted until their voices cracked. I waited for her to match my excitement, to let me feel like her daughter again. Instead, she sighed, almost distracted. "Oh, that's nice, Mei. But Sakura was just picked for the national cheerleading team. Can you believe it? We're throwing a celebration next week. Everyone will be there." The words landed like cold steel. My joy, so full, so raw, collapsed inward, crowded out by the endless orbit of my sister's spotlight. It wasn't anger that rose in me then, but something deeper, heavier, the familiar weight of being unseen. I murmured congratulations, hung up the phone, and sat in the dim light of my quarters, the ring on my finger burning like a question. Why did their pride never have room for me? Why did every triumph feel borrowed, fleeting, like I was trespassing in a story that was never mine? Wei found me there later, silent, staring at my hand. He didn't press me for words. He only sat beside me, his presence steady, grounding, and in that stillness, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to admit. No matter what I achieved, to them, I would always be second to Sakura. The ring on my finger should have been the anchor that steadied me. But as wedding plans took shape, that old unease returned. Wei. And I kept it simple. An intimate ceremony on base, surrounded by people who had fought beside us, people who understood sacrifice and loyalty. We sent invitations to my family, too, even though a quiet voice inside me whispered not to expect much. Hope is stubborn like that. It clings even when it's been bruised 1,000 times. Then the news dropped like a shell exploding in the middle of everything we were building. Sakura announced her engagement, not just any engagement, but a grand, glittering event in Dallas. The date, the exact same day as mine. I stared at the announcement splashed across social media. Chandeliers, luxury hotel ballrooms, her diamond ring flashing under the camera's light. My sister's smile wide. My parents standing beside her as though the world belonged to them. The call came soon after. My mother's voice, Akemi's, was almost apologetic, but not enough. May, could you be flexible with your wedding? Sakura's event is already booked. Deposits paid. It wouldn't make sense to compete. You can always choose another date. Another date. As though my vows, my love, my life could simply be rescheduled around my sister's spotlight. I bit my tongue until the copper taste of blood filled my mouth. But the knife cut deeper still. Hannah Kim, my closest friend since college, the one I had chosen as my maid of honor, the one who promised to stand by me at the altar, called to explain. Her voice faltered, but her decision was clear. She had agreed to MC Sakura's celebration. It's a big opportunity, May. Connections, exposure. You understand, right? I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat closed, the silence between us stretching like barbed wire. Betrayal isn't always loud. Sometimes it comes quietly, wrapped in polite words and smiles, leaving you hollow before you even realize the damage. In that moment, I understood something with bone-deep clarity. Not only had my family chosen Sakura again, but even the sister I thought I had chosen for myself had crossed the line to stand or light. I was left staring at my wedding dress hanging in the corner of my quarters, its white fabric catching the dim light. For the first time, it looked less like a promise and more like a question. The rehearsal was supposed to steady my nerves, but instead it hollowed me out further. The rose meant for families sat in stark silence, their emptiness louder than any choir. I had held out some faint thread of hope that my father, Hiroshi, might still appear, might surprise me with a gesture of pride. Instead, a clipped voicemail arrived. I can't make it, May. I promised Sakura I'd help with final preparations. His words were businesslike, efficient, as though I were no more than a scheduling conflict. Hannah's absence was explained with a vague text. Something urgent came up. So sorry. Yet, when I scrolled through Instagram later, her smile burned back at me through the screen, radiant in a boutique mirror as she tried on dresses beside Sakura's husband. No apology could blunt the sharpness of that betrayal. For a moment, it all threatened to break me. The dress, the vows, the life I was stepping into, it all felt fragile, like glass pressed too thin. My knees nearly buckled under the weight of being unwanted. And then, across the rehearsal hall, a familiar voice grounded me. Mei Lin doesn't stand alone. I turned to see Liang Chun, his uniform crisp, his wife at his side, both of them having flown all the way from California. His eyes held no pity, only certainty. If your father won't walk you down that aisle, he said, steady as ever. Then I will. Because family, the kind that matters, never leaves you behind. Something in me cracked then, but it wasn't despair. It was the quiet release of knowing I wasn't abandoned. Not completely. The next day, when the doors opened and the music swelled, I stepped forward in my white dress, my arm linked with Liang's. His medals glinted beneath the chapel lights as he guided me past the empty row that should have been filled with blood relatives. And then, like a wave rolling in, my soldiers rose as one. Boots snapped, hands lifted to their brows in perfect salute. The air vibrated with respect, not absence. Every hollow seat, every betrayal, every silence blurred against the thunder of loyalty that filled the room. In that moment, I understood the family you choose, the family that stands, is worth more than the one that walks away. The applause from my soldiers still echoed in my chest long after the vows were spoken. Wei's hand was warm in mine, and for the first time in years, I felt anchored, whole, surrounded by people who chose to stand with me. The laughter during dinner, the quiet toasts, the clink of glasses, it all felt like a balm on wounds I had carried too long. But joy has a way of being fragile. As the knife cut through the first slice of our wedding cake, my phone buzzed on the table. At first, I ignored it, choosing to lose myself in Wei's smile. Then I glanced down and my stomach clenched. 36 missed calls, all from my mother, Akemi. It haunted me through the evening, that barrage of unanswered rings. When the hall grew quiet and guests drifted away, I finally stepped into the cool night air and dialed back. Akemi answered on the first ring, her voice trembling, not with joy, but accusation. "May, how could you shut us out like this?" Sakura showed us the emails, the messages you told her we weren't welcome, that your soldiers were your only family. We sat at home humiliated, thinking you wanted nothing to do with us. My throat went dry. It was a lie so bold it nearly stole my breath. Sakura had hacked into my accounts, forged words I never wrote, twisted my loyalty into rejection. And my parents, so quick to believe her, so unwilling to see me, accepted the fabrication without question. I tried to explain, but the damage was already done. My father Hiroshi's silence pressed heavy over the line. My mother's sobs, tinged with anger. They had chosen her story over my truth. Later, I heard what unfolded at Sakura's grand engagement in Dallas. In the middle of the celebration, her husband stumbled upon the real emails, the trail of deceit she had left behind. Before the crowd, he tore off the ring and told her he would not marry a woman who betrayed her own sister. Gasps, whispers, the collapse of her perfect image. Her downfall lit up the same social feeds that had once paraded her triumphs. And yet, none of it gave me back what was lost. My family had abandoned my wedding day. No apology, no revelation could erase the empty seats I had walked past. That absence would always echo louder than their belated regret. The hotel suite smelled faintly of coffee and wilted roses when I walked in. My parents, Hiroshi and Akemi, were already there, their faces drawn, their eyes red-rimmed. For a moment, I saw them not as the figures who had towered over my childhood, but as two tired people who had lost their footing. Akemi's hands shook as she reached for mine, her voice catching. "May, we're sorry. We've been blind. We favored Sakura for so long that when she spoke, we believed her without question. We thought we were protecting the daughter who needed us most. We didn't see what we were doing to you." Hiroshi's eyes brimmed, but the words didn't soothe me. They came too late, after too much silence. I held their gaze, my voice steady, though my chest tightened. "You didn't just believe her. You abandoned me on the one day I should have mattered. Do you understand? I walked down that aisle without you, and nothing can change that." Their tears fell harder, but I didn't bend. For once, I didn't fold myself smaller to fit their version of family. "I don't need easy apologies," I continued. "If you want me in your lives, then something has to change. Real change. Therapy for all of us. And Sakura, she needs help. Real intervention, not indulgence." The silence stretched long, broken only by my mother Akemi's sob. My father Hiroshi nodded slowly, his pride fractured. "If that's the only way, then we'll do it," he whispered. But I had already drawn the line. My future wasn't theirs to dictate anymore. Wei was waiting for me downstairs, his hand steady, his presence enough. My soldiers had stood taller for me than my blood ever had. And in that truth, I finally understood family isn't about who shares your last name. It's about who refuses to leave when the world does. As I turned to go, my parents called my name, their voices heavy with regret. I didn't look back. Not in anger, but in finality. Some wounds can scar, others can heal, but only if the bleeding stops. That night, I stepped out of the hotel and into the quiet dark, my hand finding ways. For the first time, I felt the weight lift. My life was mine now, to be built not on absence, but on loyalty, not on blood, but on love that chose to stay.